design class, which is making wooden jewellery that includes rings, brooches, pendants and bracelets. My name is Ben Fletcher, technical tutor here in 3D Workshop in Canterbury. So this class is a great introduction to the workshop itself because you'll be using various machines and hand tools in different ways depending on your design, and that's the important thing, is that it's going to be your design, not just something I've done. So don't just copy me in my processes, but saying that here's a bunch of things I did. So when it comes to your design, you could be doing something that is complex, or you could do something simple, and simple can be harder to achieve than complex sometimes. So when you're looking at making something that is very minimalist, like some of these rings here, they're very clean, very nice, simple bands, and the reason why that can be perhaps somewhat more difficult is that you've got nowhere to hide with your mistakes. Say if you haven't done some of the finishing processes well enough with sanding, etc., then that will be glaringly obvious when you've got something as simple as this. There's nowhere to hide. As opposed to something more like this, where you've got a lot more texture, a lot more shape going on, there's plenty of places for you to hide. So this one, I just used the Dremel multi-tool to gouge out a bunch of lines, and then I scorched it afterwards. Your design could be kinetic, so it could actually move, open and close, which is more helpful because I can't fit my wrist into this one, so now I can. Yours could be oversized. It could be quite a large piece and there's nothing stopping you keeping on going further. These could be quite obfuscating, large and annoying to wear. Perhaps that's part of your design. Maybe you're just that awkward. It could be more functional. We've got some of these which are binding in a way, so perhaps you're locking digits together, or perhaps it's designed to be made by more than one person, so you're actually unable to... oh no, it'll be okay. Good thing is, if you do get these stuck, it's just wood. So that's a pro and a con of making wooden jewellery. Good thing is that it's all very simple. Not complex to actually make the thing. You're starting with the rings especially, you've got a hole and some material around it, and that's all you've got to design is the material that goes around it. So if you do get it stuck, like I said, it's just wood, you can break it. And that can happen by accident as well if you're making something that's particularly thin. This one is quite a good example of that, even if that shows up on camera. It came from an accident, like a lot of designs can do. I sanded this too thin and there's not much left of it. I don't know if this would survive daily wear and tear, but it's still here right now. But don't be put off if when you make your first one it does break. It can be quite likely depending on the wood that you're doing. So you might want to keep a little bit more thickness to the ring. This one here has got about 3mm, and that's good because I can't crush that one, whereas this one here has got about 1mm, and if I wanted to, I could quite easily break that. I'm not going to because I don't want to. So your design might have a lot more functionality to it, perhaps. Here we've got one that is a little portable painting palette, so you can keep on doing your paints in there. And that's always there for you. It could be that perhaps pointing at things isn't working for you, so you could accentuate it with a great big arrow like that, or you could go full on disgusting with it and perhaps make another finger. I wish I never had, because now I see that in my nightmares. This one, made this one for anxiety, so that on the outside you can just see a simple ring, but on the inside there's sort of a comforter in a way, something that you can hold on that you know is there. Got some novelty ones, little hand there. Making Brooches and pendants are even easier because essentially you've just got an object, and for the brooch you stick a pin on the back of it, and for a necklace you can just put a hole in it or use a little screw eyelet here. And for that it's as simple as poking a hole in it, stick the screw eye in, and then thread some twine or string through it, and now that is a wearable necklace. And because making brooches and pendants are so easy, what I'm going to focus today on is making a ring. So let's do that now. So the list of tools we're going to be using for this are ring sizer, Forstner drill bits, cordless drill, bandsaw, various sanders, hand files, a Dremel multi-tool, and a lot of sandpaper. It's possible you could make the wooden rings from home. You would need a cordless drill, a set of Forstner bits. I could send you the file for the ring sizer if you email me, sandpaper and a handsaw, and yeah, you'd be ready to go. But today we're going to be using the wood workshop with bandsaws and the various sanders and the Dremel multi-tool. Okay, using the ring sizer itself, essentially you've got some holes with numbers, and those numbers correspond to the Forstner drill bits here. So I would go along with this, and that 19 is a bit too small. That's a 20, and that fits me. So I'll pick out the 20mm drill bit and put it in the cordless drill. So these all work the same, no matter if you've got one at home or if you're using one of the multiple different brands we've got in the workshop. They're just different colours, they do the same thing. Just open and close at the end here. Close it on. This one's got a nice handy clicking noise, let you know that it's good to go. So I'm going to troubleshoot a few problems that can happen while you're drilling. I've got this piece of scrap plywood that I'm going to put on top of the bench to protect it while I'm drilling, so I don't want to drill directly into the bench. And I've selected my piece of wood that I want to make a ring from. It's quite a long piece of wood, and I do that intentionally so that while I'm holding this and drilling it down, I'm not going to be holding it so close to the business end of that, whereas if I was actually picking out a particular piece of wood that I like the grain of, perhaps, like with this piece of yew wood, it's very small, and I don't like the idea of holding on to this when it's so close to the end of that drill bit. I don't think it'd be very nice. So the first problem you might meet when using this is you pull the trigger and nothing really happens. First thing you can do about that is just make sure that it's going in the right direction. So there's a button here that you press, and that will make it go the right way or the wrong way. Now it's ready to go. I'm holding this far away. Still nothing happens. I'm doing everything that feels right. It's going in the right direction. I'm pulling the trigger. Just press harder. And then you actually get some wood shavings coming off. So that means you're going into it. Another problem you can have while you're drilling this is if you're not holding on to this while you're drilling, it could eventually start spinning around, and that could knock things flying all over the place. So you do need to be holding on to this. And this is quite easy with a long piece like this. If it was slightly smaller and you had to get closer, then you might want to reconsider what you're doing. One solution you can have is just using a simple quick clamp. So the release button is on the back here, and then you just use the larger trigger to close that. Now I don't have to hold on to that, which means I'm free to perhaps put a hand on the back of it if I need the extra bit of weight to put behind it. If it's still not working out for you, if you're not able to get all the way through, another thing you can do is actually just stir it around a little bit. And you'll find that it will quite quickly get through. Different woods are going to act differently. So this is oak, which is sort of a medium hardness, but there's also some other examples I've got here. There's rosewood, boxwood, much harder, take a bit more effort to get through. And then there's things like the softwood, we've got pine, and there's also another hardwood, mahogany, but they're still very easy to drill through. So you find that the amount of pressure you exert on these things will be different. So I've got this small piece of yew wood, and I want to drill a hole in this, and it's too small for me to hold onto it safely. I don't want to be holding this like this, because the piece of wood could spin around and that's going to possibly hurt, and even worse still, it might slip completely and I could get got by the end of that drill bit, and I really don't want to do that. So what we can use is this little corner jig here, and all that means is that you've got something which stops this spinning around, so I can lock that into the corner, and when I switch this on, it'll stop it spinning around because it's got nowhere to go. But I also don't like the idea of holding on so close to this still, so I'm going to use another piece of wood to hold on to that and lock it in. Now, now that you've drilled a hole in your piece of wood, you might want to draw the shape that you want to cut out on there. I'll show you a quick trick. So if you just place your finger against the pencil and lock the pencil on one part, your finger on the other, you can keep them parallel when you run your finger across the wood. The same goes for the ring. If you put your finger on the inside of the ring and just hold the pencil in one place, you should be able to get a fairly accurate circle drawn, or whatever shape that it is that you want to do. So I've drilled holes in two different woods. I've got a piece of yew and a piece of oak, and I'm going to cut both these rings out now, and I'm going to use the bandsaw to do that. If you're doing this at home, you can still do it. It's absolutely fine, because with the bandsaw we can't cut these out in full ring shapes anyway. We're going to cut them quite square. And another reason why I like to have a longer piece of wood is not just for holding onto it whilst drilling, it keeps me further away from the bandsaw blade as well. I will be able to cut out this U1 as well. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. First, I just need to put on glasses and make sure that the guard is set to the right height. At the moment there's too much blade, so we just need to bring this down so that you can just about pass that underneath there. Therefore, all this is covered up. So let's cut this out. See, I've got one last cut to do and the ring is still attached to this longer piece of wood, and that's the way in which I want to do it. I want to not separate it from the wood and then try and cut a smaller piece. I want to keep it attached to this longer piece for as long as possible. So now, how to cut out a much smaller piece. For that we're going to use the push sticks, and we keep them quite flat because we've got these V notches in here. That means that we can keep hold of this, and it means you don't have to get anywhere near the blade while this machine is on. You can also use it to get rid of any of the scrap items that come off of the wood. Here we have our two rings ready to go. They look awful, I know that, it's no secret. It's because, like I said, the cutting process isn't that important. We don't have to get it close to those lines that we might have drawn on. We just need to separate it from the larger bulk of the material. I've still got my pencil line on here to follow, and now I'll take it over to the disc sander. Before we go to the disc sander, I'll show you the bobbin sander. Now, if you want to change the size of the ring, if you want to make it larger, this is the best tool to use for that. Because we have a 16 and an 18mm drill bit, but we don't have a 17. So drill a 16 hole and you can use this to make it larger. For the disc sander, I always use this freehand to begin with. I've got the pencil line there that I can go up to and just start rough to begin with. using the left hand side of the disc, because that is the rougher side, it takes out more because it's going faster. The further towards the centre you go, the slower it moves, so you can be a bit more controlled if you move it towards the centre. So I start off on the left, move closer towards the centre and take a little bit less off. I could do the whole thing like this, trying to be as accurate as I can, but I also have a ring jig here that you can slot over and then just gently move that around once it makes contact with the sander, and eventually you'll have a perfect circle made because it keeps it concentric. There we go. This is the Dremel multi-tool. You can have various different ends on it. This one is for engraving. It's one of my favourites. This is the bigger version of the same tool, essentially. This one you can use for full-on carving, and it's what I use for carving most of these objects. And then there's this one very much similar to the bobbin sander I've just shown you. This is a drum sander. It could be used on the inside and on the outside as well. So if you don't need to use a hand file, you could use this for quite a lot of the different processes. But be careful not to lose it up the extractor. So I've got my basic ring shape. I've got a hole and some material around it. Like I say, this is just a simple band that I'm going to be doing. At the moment it's quite rough, it's very square edged, looks quite thick. And I need to do some finishing work on it because I've got bandsaw marks, I've got sander marks from the disc sander, and we're going to be taking over with all hand tools from now on. Okay, so I've got these 3 panels here of sandpaper just stuck down. I've got 120, 240 and 400 grit. The higher the number, the smoother it gets. And from now on it doesn't take long if you do it right. So you don't want to just be sort of very nonchalant about this. You want to actually be quite quick, be quite aggressive with it as well. I'll show you exactly what to do. So I'm only going to use the paper here to do the front and back sides of this, the flat parts of it. And starting with 120, that side, and I just check up on it. You don't just sort of do it and then not look at what you've done. You need to actually see that you've actually made progress. I'm sanding with the grain, what it means that you can see the lines of wood working there. You sand backwards and forwards along that rather than against it, so going the other way, because you'll just see those scratches much worse. Once you're happy you've done what you need to with 120 grit, it gets a lot quicker from here on in. You don't spend as much time with the 240. Just a quick once over. I can see, yeah, that's looking good and feeling really nice. And it does feel nice. It can seem kind of creepy when you're there just kind of rubbing the wood because it's all smooth, but when you do the finishing on this wood, it just is a nice feeling when you start up with a really rough piece of wood and then you get this really sort of plastic or glass smooth feeling, and it's just got that warmth to it that wood has. I'm not a creep. I'm not a creep. So I've done the front and back sides to this. Now I want to round over these edges because I don't want them to be square. You could have them as square, I just don't want to with mine. I want it to look very kind of smooth and round on those edges. So I will take just a normal hand file and I will use as much of it as I can. So starting at the tip there, going all the way down to the base and just pushing it over and around the ring. Not just backwards and forwards like this, not dragging it. That's just not going to do enough. You need to push it over, and it just doesn't take much time at all. So that part there I'm done with, and it would take me a minute or two to complete the whole thing. But what I've got now is a whole lot of gouges taken out of this from the file. I can see all the filing marks there, so I need to get rid of those, and that's where I would move on to using sandpaper again like this, but these ones are stuck down. This is just sandpaper as it is, so I would just You could even, if you've got rough enough grit, if you've got like 100 grit or something, you don't need to use the file. You could just use a sandpaper. I do that just as often as I use a file if I can't find it. And you just sand it over until you're happy that you've got rid of the marks that are there before, and then you'll move up through the grits again. And once you've finished everything that you need to do with the abrasives, then you decide what actual finish you want to use as well. Today we're going to be using finishing oil. You could use have a gloss lacquer as well, which is a lot quicker if you want it to be really shiny. There's differences between the effect of the finishing oil depending on how many coats you use. So here we have two rings, which are very similar. The different woods got ebony and rosewood. The ebony has had 1 coat, the rosewood has had about 5 coats, and there's a vast difference in the level of shine you get on those. The trouble with that is that it does take 5 hours between each coat, so you don't have to watch it dry in that time. I recommend you don't. Just do something else, anything else. I come in the morning, I put a coat on, I go home in the evening, I put a coat on before I leave, and then in a couple of days it's done. Okay, so and there's no more work to do with that in between. It's just let it dry. I actually quite like the 1 coat of oil. You may say that it's not as protected, but it just looks nice. It looks more like wood to me. I can see the grain on this, whereas if it's so shiny, you get all those reflections, which means it looks more like plastic than it does wood. But that's just a personal preference. Do what you like. So I've got this random lump of oak that I want to show you the finishing process on, because it's a little bit larger, you can see it a bit more, and perhaps I'll do it on a ring as well so you can see what will happen. So I'll start with some grits here. This is actually 180. Feels nice. I've got 320 there, that'll be good enough. You can keep on going up. I like to go to 400 if I can. If I've got it lying around, I just had a 320. Still feels really nice. Not a creep. And now let's apply some oil to that. Just going to turn this over a little bit. That's plenty. And just put that on there, and the grain really, it sings. You can hear it. It brings out the natural grain and the beauty of the wood. It just is a great moment when you've made your ring or bracelet, whatever it is you're making, and you've done all that work with the sanding, the cutting, everything. You've got this wonderful looking object, and you take it that one step further with the finishing oil, and you know that you're done with the whole process, and it's a good feeling. So that's it for lesson 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've made some interesting things, whether that's using this video to come back into the workshop with a better idea of what you want to do, or if you've done some of this stuff at home. Yeah, I hope you have enjoyed it and look forward to seeing what you've done.